Hello and good morning, everyone. Thank you again to the 5th grade for filling in while the 7th graders are away. It's nice to see so many faces. It looks like Finley has a lot of support for this speech. We're all looking forward to it. Today, Finley Clark and her speech, Remembering Frank. Finley?
Being quadriplegic is when a person loses function in all 4 of their limbs. The way most people become quadriplegic is by trauma from injuring a spinal cord, from medical issues, or from sickness. The truth about being quadriplegic is that this disability is visible. It is the hardest thing in the world because quadriplegics lose function in everything in their bodies from the neck down. When people become paralyzed like this, they can't do anything they did before. They can't get out of bed in the morning without help. They can't drive their car to work. They can't even work. The list could go on forever. Just imagine if you were to damage your spine one day and you couldn't do anything you used to be able to do before. I wouldn't even be able to type this speech. This is what happened to my great Uncle Frank. When most people become quadriplegic, it is the hardest challenge for them. A lot of them become depressed and can't find reasons to wake up in the morning. They believe they have no purpose anymore. Most quadriplegics are still able to speak, but some are only able to speak a little, or they have difficulty speaking normally. Some don't even want to speak at all, or they just say a few words because the trauma of losing their physical abilities is so hard on them. Sometimes, though, quadriplegics have better luck, and they get some function back in their arms, but they still have no control over their hands. Unfortunately, Uncle Frank was not this lucky. He could only speak parts of words, and he had no physical control over any part of his body. Uncle Frank's accident is still sort of a mystery because no one was there to see it happen. I have asked many of my family members about it, and everyone has told me a different story. One theory is that Uncle Frank was taking his clothes to the laundromat and a piece of his clothing got stuck in the wheel of his bicycle, which caused him to fall. One part of the story is the same though. Uncle Frank was on a bike with no helmet, which caused his paralysis. But again, no one really knows what happened. When I was growing up, I used to always hear people tell stories about Uncle Frank and how he was the fun uncle who never wanted to grow up. My Uncle Justin, my mom's cousin, used to show us home videos with Uncle Frank from when he and my mom were little, and I would wonder what Uncle Frank would have been like if he had never gotten hurt. Every summer, my mom would take Frankie, Fletcher, and me to Connecticut to visit my grandpa, aka Nonno, which means grandfather in Italian. Nonno was Uncle Frank's older brother. We'd also visit my other great uncle, Brent, aka Big Nonno, because he's taller than my grandfather. Nonno said that Uncle Frank never spoke harshly about anyone, even the ones who had hurt him the most. He taught Nonno that good people can still have a tough life, and being stubborn pays a dear price. Uncle Frank also taught Nonno that even when everything and everyone is against you, put a smile on your face, then walk away. The accident happened when my mom was pregnant with me, and the first time I ever met Uncle Frank, I was a baby. The second time I met Uncle Frank, I was pretty young, maybe 5 or 6. I remember seeing him in his hospital bed and just asking my mom all these questions about him and wondering why he could not talk or move, because at that time I did not know about or understand being paralyzed. The last time I saw Uncle Frank, I think I was 9, and by this time I had been told everything that had happened to him and understood how much it affected his quality of life, so it was a much sadder visit. I couldn't even imagine what my mom was going through seeing him like that. She knew Uncle Frank before the accident when he was a lively, active, and healthy, and a passionate writer. It was heartbreaking. Not only did I feel bad for my mom, but I also felt uncomfortable seeing Uncle Frank lying in bed. During the last visit, my sister wanted Uncle Frank to look at her into her eyes and know that she was there. She kept asking my mom why he wasn't looking at her, and my mom said that it made him sad to see us. Then after about 5 minutes of Frankie staring at him, Uncle Frank finally looked at my sister. That's when she said she was ready to leave. In the summer of 2018, on the 4th of July, my mother told me the bad news that Uncle Frank had passed away from kidney failure, a complication of being quadriplegic. After I found out, I was very upset, but it was the hardest for my Nonno and Big Nonno and everyone else on my mom's side of the family. What happened to Uncle Frank has had a big impact on my family. For one, my mom gave Fletcher, Frankie, and me F names because of Uncle Frank, and my sister Frankie is even named after him. To my mom, Uncle Frank was the fun uncle, who always spent time with his nieces and nephews. He was also her godfather in an Italian household. He taught about music and shared records with her and her cousin Justin. Uncle Frank would always eat healthy and would make my mom and Justin and her brother Joel all a fruit. He called it God's candy. He would even sneak fruit into movie theaters so they would not buy candy. Uncle Frank would park in the furthest spot in a parking lot and tell my mom, "You have legs, use them." How ironic for someone who was so healthy and active to have such a tragic ending. Uncle Frank would also read his original poems to Justin and my mom and ask them, did this invoke an emotion? And they would talk about how words have different meanings, how they are so impactful, and how meanings of words can shift depending on what comes before and after. Lastly, Uncle Frank was unique and did not care what other people thought of him. He lived life to the fullest. Another impact he made on our family is safety. Because Uncle Frank wasn't wearing a helmet when he got hurt, my mom now makes us wear helmets when riding anything, bike, skateboard, scooter, whatever. Uncle Frank was also a positive influence on Justin, which is why he is the fun uncle he is now. The reason why Justin loves music so much is because of Uncle Frank. Uncle Frank taught Justin to listen to the lyrics of songs and think about what they are saying. Uncle Frank is even the reason why Justin is athletic and eats healthy, natural foods. He would always tell Justin to do push-ups when the commercials are on TV, instead of watching people in ads telling him what to buy and eat. Also because of Uncle Frank, Justin is close to the ocean. He loves it so much because Uncle Frank loved it too. For his 8th grade graduation, Uncle Frank gave Justin a black long-sleeve t-shirt that said, "There are no victims, only volunteers." At that time, Justin did not know what that meant, but now it really means something to him. It is one of the pillars of his life today. Uncle Frank was a victim of the bicycle accident, but he never acted like a victim. Unlike all the other people who have been victims of accidents who can't find reasons to wake up in the morning, Uncle Frank never gave up. My mother's brother Joel remembers how Uncle Frank would take him to play basketball at a local park, and games were always competitive, and they got very physical. There were a few occasions when guys would get pretty rough with Uncle Frank because of how well he played, and the only way to stop him was to foul hard. One time, a guy even pushed Uncle Frank when he was going for a layup. Uncle Frank fell hard and cut his hand and face. He was mad, but he did not call a foul. Instead, Uncle Frank got up, brushed himself off, and whispered in Joel's ear, "We win and we leave." And that's what they did. My great aunt Tia, Uncle Frank's sister-in-law, believed that Uncle Frank was the salt of the earth. She would always talk to Frank about sports and life. She mentioned that Frank would carry a backpack with his books and poems everywhere he went, so he could write about things that inspired him. The last time she saw Uncle Frank, he would not stop thanking her for visiting him in the hospital. Big Nano said that he would always be amazed by how Uncle Frank knew that he would never be able to use his arms and legs again for the rest of his life, but he would still greet everyone with a smile and ask them how they were doing. Uncle Frank showed all of us that the good die young, and he was just that good. He always wanted to know how others were doing when they felt they should be asking him. Being quadriplegic is hard, and it is horrible when it happens. It's the worst thing ever. But Uncle Frank never thought of himself as a victim. He volunteered to make everyone else's and his family's life better.
Thank you, Finley. That was an excellent speech. I love the family photos. Those are great. You should really cherish those. I have finally unlocked the mystery of the F names. I know where they came from now. There was a lot of wisdom in there. Any particular words of wisdom that you value the most from Great Uncle Frank?
I think it's the quote, "There are no victims, only volunteers."
Okay, I like that one too. There was also something in there about always leaving people with a smile on their face. Yeah, that's an important one because people really care about how you make them feel. Yeah. Great job, Finley.
Thank you.
Yeah.